Hi there, hello there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to reading Machiavelli's Discourses. We are still in book one. In fact, remember, book one's a big book. And today we're looking at chapter 16 of book one. Now, the past couple chapters have focused on the question of religion. So now we move from the question of religion to now a different question. That is the question of, as he starts here, a people used to living under a prince maintains its freedom with difficulty, if by some accident, if it becomes free. In other words, this is the title, that if a people used to living under a prince maintains its freedom with difficulty, if by accident it becomes free. So this is the thrust of this chapter. First section, first paragraph. Infinite examples read in the embraces of ancient histories demonstrate how much difficulty there is for a people used to living under a prince to preserve its freedom afterwards, if by some accident it acquired it, as Rome acquired it after the expulsion of the Tarquins. Such difficulty is reasonable, for that people is nothing other than a brute animal, although of a furious and feral nature, has always been nourished in prison and then in servitude. So, in other words, his argument is that this people, the prince, is this, a ferocious and feral brute animal people, and that they have been made in a prison and in servitude. Then, if it is left free in the field to its fate, it becomes the prey of the first one who seeks to rechain it, not being used to feeding it to feed itself, and not knowing places where it may have to take refuge. In other words, you've been so long under the rule of others, you don't know how to be free. You don't know how to feed yourself. You don't know how to. In other words, by feed it yourself, he means here is the metaphor he's using the animal. The animal has been domesticated, okay, and then you dump him in the woods. Doesn't know how to hunt. Doesn't know how to do things. Doesn't know where to go find the food. Doesn't know where to find refuge. It becomes constantly afraid, right? And until someone re-grabs it and puts it under control, right? So second paragraph. The same happens to a people, since it is used to living under the government of others, not knowing how to reason about either public defense or public offense, neither knowing princes nor known by them. It quickly returns beneath a yoke that is most often heavier than the one it had removed from the neck a little before. In other words, it gets worse. In other words, that's someone who takes another. They were governed. They had a yoke. They were controlled. But now, once they're free, they don't know how to do things. And what happens is someone will come. They'll be easy prey to those who want to impose on them and take them. And the new yoke is going to be more burdensome than the previous yoke. In other words, it'll be heavier than the one that removed from the neck and little before. It finds itself in these difficulties whenever the matter is corrupt. Whenever the matter, in other words, if the matter, the people are corrupt. This is an interesting argument. Machiavelli this is actually very similar to Aristotle's argument about the problem of why the deviant regimes occur. The deviant regimes occur for Aristotle is because of the fact of the matter, the people, the people, the thing that make the thing up, right? If this is corrupt, then it's going to be very difficult for such people to rule themselves, to be free, Okay? Therefore, there's not disagreement. In many ways, Machiavelli is very much in agreement with Aristotle, particularly of book 4, 5, and 6. Not necessarily in agreement with the more utopian vision of Aristotle, but that is often presented and put forward. But the darker version of Aristotle, or the more realistic version of Aristotle, particularly of the so-called practical books. Now, and particularly in book 5 of Machiavelli, of Aristotle's Politics. So he goes, for a people into which corruption has entered in, everything cannot live free, nor for a short time at all, as will be discoursed below. In other words, once you have a people and once they have become corrupted in everything, in other words, corruption has entered in everything, this people cannot live free. So therefore, in other words, so our reasonings are about these people among whom corruption has not expanded very much, and there is more of the good than of the spoiled. So our reasonings are about those people among whom corruption has not been expanded. So we can't address the question of, if they're totally corrupt, then there's no possibility of freedom. But if they are corrupt, but there are some people whom corruption has not expanded very much. There is more of the good than of the spoiled. Okay, this is the next question. 3, to that written above, another difficulty is joined, which is that the state that becomes free makes partisan enemies and not partisan friends. In other words, the state that was, in other words, he makes a point here that there's another difficulty. Given that thing, the question of how corrupt are the people? Are they totally corrupt, or are they just partially corrupt? And the problem of them not knowing how to govern themselves. They may not be corrupted, or corruption may not be total, but they also do not know how to govern themselves freely. They only know how to be ruled. Okay, and he's saying, well, there's another difficulty. There's another difficulty, he says. That is, when you become free, right? When the state, which is that the state that becomes free, makes enemies, not friends. Why? Because all those become its partisan enemies who were prevailing under the tyrannical state, feeding off the riches of the prince. And when the ability to prevail is taken away from them, they cannot live content and are forced, each one of them, to attempt to take up the tyranny again, and so return to their authority. In other words, the people who benefited in the old... Now, this is a very important point. We're going to study... This is people who... You have to understand, why... I mean, there is the argument of people saying, well, in Poland also, you have people... You have a lot of people who still remember fondly the communist period. Why? Because they were they were benefited from it. Now, of course, how can communist tyranny is horrible? Yeah, it's true. Communist tyranny is tyranny. But there were classes of people who were in the system benefiting. So when the change came, they lost their control. Now places like Poland, what happened was they didn't. They were given everything. Okay. In other words, the party in the control of the party system was transferred to a democracy or a public thing, a free state, or the appearance of a free state. But the actual people who ran the old party and their children were given control of everything. And this is the fight in most societies, post-communist world, is between those who want to change, who weren't the benefactors in the old system and want the freedom, and those who were part of the internal, who don't want a real decommunization. Same thing in places like Saddam Hussein's Iraq. Okay, the idea of the Ba'athist parties, the Ba'athist loyalists. There are some people like the idea of Christians in Iraq, and Christians in Syria. They were benefited. They saw themselves benefited by the Ba'athist regimes, both the Assad regime and the why were they? Because they were a captive. This is the kind of minority that the tyrant likes. Because why? He can use them to his ends. Because like Stalin used Jews. Stalin liked using Jews. Why? If you look at the leadings of the people like in the KGB and the most extreme elements of the part, why did Stalin like using Jews? Well, because he liked using them because he could protect them and say, "Hey, I'm your protector," in that sense. Not always. He was inconsistent. Stalin was inconsistent on that question. He became paranoid at the end of his life, and so there was a Jewish conspiracy against him, and therefore, in the party itself, saw a conspiracy against the Jews. But later in the 50s, but earlier they were. He used them in the 30s and 40s. Why? Because because they could not turn on him. The rest of society loathed them. They were seen as aliens, and because they were aliens, they could not stand in opposition to him. If they tried to seize power or do something or take over or try to remove him, they had no support. Like, this is why Beria, who thought he could get in control after Stalin's death, immediately collapsed. Was easily removed because of why? Because he was perceived like deception, the Jewish or in other words, hated and despised in that sense. That therefore the rest of the society or the rest of the party that controls would never accept him, and he had no constituency that supports them. That's the whole point. So therefore, that's what the danger of here is. You have anytime you have this change, you have people who benefited in the system are going to lose the benefit they had on the old system, and the new world the new world of freedom isn't going to. They don't know how to work within it, and they're not going to. They may not even get. They might be seen as traitors or people, and not liked by the new system, and they don't like the new system because they lost what they have. And they don't know how to do it. They don't see a future outside the system. Okay? So therefore, they attempt to take up the tyranny again or to return to their authority, right? One does not acquire partisan friends, as I said, because a free way of life offers honors and rewards through certain honest and determinate causes. And outside these, it neither rewards nor honors anyone. And when one has these honors and those useful things that it appears to him he merits, he does not confess that he has an obligation to those who reward him. In other words, he feels like, in other words, that there is no kind of friend. He makes the argument that those who get things because they merit it, there's not a sense that I have to obligate you to do something. The free way of life, you get this because of you earned it, you merited it, and you don't have an obligation to the others, and there's not a building up of partisan friends, right? In other words, he does not confess that he has an obligation to those who had rewarded him. Besides this, the common utility that is drawn from a free way of life is not recognized by anyone while it is possessed. In other words, they're ingrateful. People forget them. In other words, the benefits of this way of life is not, people don't recognize the benefits necessarily, he says here, while it's possessed. This is being able to enjoy one's things freely without any suspicion, nor fearing for the honors of wives and that of children. not to be afraid of oneself. In other words, these things. Now, when you're free, you don't think about these things. Okay, you don't have to think of the. In other words, it's only when you're enslaved that all of a sudden these other things kind of become kind of key, and you realize what you lost or what you don't have. Not to be afraid for oneself. Nor one ever, in other words, for no one ever confesses that he has an obligation to one who does not offend him. In other words, no I have not offended you. I have not done something. Therefore, I don't. No one says that I don't have an obligation to those who have not done harm to me. In other words, that's an interesting point. That you only seem to have a care as when someone has harmed you. How about when they have not harmed you? Okay, in other words, that there is this. And that's the interesting point about the part of, in fact, this is a weird aspect of what Machiavelli suggests here, that people tend to not, in other words, among free people, that they should have friendship, but they tend not to, because of this problem, right? 4. So, as is said above, a state that is free and that newly emerges comes to have partisan enemies and not partisan friends. In other words, as you become a free state and that newly emerges, it comes to have enemies who hate it and doesn't like it, not partisan friends. If one wishes to remedy these inconveniences and the disorders that the difficulties written above might bring with them, there is no remedy more powerful, nor more valid, more secure, and more necessary than to kill the sons of Brutus. Okay, this is a very important. Now, in other words, you have to kill the sons of Brutus. He says here. In other words, there's no more remedy. In other words, if you want to avoid this problem that he's just highlighted, that you've gone from an unfree state to a free state, and that the danger here is that you're going to have the people who benefit the old system are going to want to return to that system, and long to return, and will find a means to attack the regime. Therefore, the only way, he says, the most powerful, more valid, more secure, and more necessity than killing the sons. What does killing the sons of Brutus mean? This is literally the story of Brutus, who liberates Rome in the Republic, helps one of the two men who brings, this is the whole story of rape of Lucretia, right? Your Roman history about the rape of Lucretia, and how Brutus, who was the clown before, all of a sudden becomes the eloquent man, demanding that the Romans avenge her and kick the kings out, right? And this is a very important metaphor. And it is Brutus who leads the Romans to expel the Tarquins, right? This is he and another person. And that, in fact, what happens is that they've make the Republic, right? And then what happens is his sons, and with other men, other sons of other people, who look favorably, they remember wonderful the time of the kings. And they plot to bring the king back, right? The prince back. And it is discovered, they're all captured, and Brutus has them all, including his own sons, killed, right? And therefore Machiavelli says you need to kill the sons of Brutus. Who are the sons of Brutus? The sons of Brutus are everyone who thinks they benefit from the old regime. They look fondly to the old regime. Now, if you take Machiavelli serious here, what the Polish should have done was to, kill the children of the apparatchiks and those people. You needed to, but we don't believe in that. Us liberals don't believe in this. But the failure to exterminate the sons of Brutus leaves you in a situation where you have enemies who want to restore the old order. Okay? This is a danger here. Okay? And you need to do this. You need to, as history shows, They were indeed induced to conspire with other young Romans against the fatherland because of nothing other than that they could not take advantage. In other words, they could not take advantage extraordinary under the consuls, as under the kings, under the king. So that the freedom of the people appeared to have become their servitude. Right? This is Livy, 2 Livy 3:5, right? So he's going back in time and like this. Whoever takes up the governing of a multitude, either by the way of freedom or by the way of principality, and he does not secure against those who are enemies to that new order, makes a state of short life. In other words, you need to secure yourself of the enemy of that new order. You're going to be either if you're going to create a new political system, you're going to create the new system. You would have to do either a republic or a principality. You need to do what? You need to secure yourself against those who are enemies of that new order. If you fail to do that, your state, this thing you're creating, won't have a life. It will be undone. It is true that I judge unhappily those princes who have to hold to extraordinary ways to secure their states, since they have the multitude as enemies. In other words, princes who have to use extraordinary means to secure those states. You have a prince who has to use all those extraordinary means. What? Because why? They have the people as their enemy, the multitude as the enemy. For the one who has the few as enemies secures himself easily and without many scandals. But he who has the collectivity as an enemy never secures himself. Again, this repeats very much what he says in The Prince. This is this is the argument that he made in The Prince. There's not a disagreement here. And the more cruelty he uses, the weaker his principality becomes, right? That's the whole point, right? The more he has to use harsh measures, the more violent, his weaker he becomes. So the greater remedy he has is to seek to make the people friendly to himself, right? He needs to make the people friendly. The few can be dealt with easy. The prince, if you're a prince, you have to do this. You have your choice. You can either have the few or the many as a friend or an enemy. And the problem here is if the few are your friends, then the many will be your enemies, because the few and the many are kind of at odds with each other. It's more difficult it's much more difficult to maintain order, because it's going to be far less secure if the people are against you, the multitude is against you. It's far easier to deal with the few. Okay, and if you have to use and to maintain against the many, the multitude, you have to use excessive you have to use lots and lots and lots of coercion, lots and lots of violence. And what happens is that this makes you hated, this makes you despised, makes it difficult to maintain, makes your rule less and less stable. Five. Although this discourse does not conform to the heading, now this is that point, this is Livy 10, right? Sorry. As written above, right? This doesn't. What I'm talking about doesn't necessarily agree to what's written above. Since it speaks here of a prince, and there of a republic, nonetheless, so as not to have to return to this matter, I wish to speak to it briefly. In other words, he's going to address the, in other words, what I've just said does not conform to the heading, but not to return to it. I'm going to address to it. I'm going to address to it briefly. Therefore, if a prince wishes to win over a people that has been an enemy of him, speaking of those princes who have become tyrants over their fatherlands, I say he should examine first what the people desire, and he will always find that it desires two things. One, not to be avenged against, one, to be avenged against those who are the cause, that is servile. So they desire two things, right? The people desire two things. One is to be avenged against those who are the cause of that it is servile, that why they're servile, and the other to recover its freedom. So it makes a very interesting point that the people, who is the cause of their servility? They want vengeance against them. And the second thing is what? That they want to restore their freedom. They want to restore their that. The first desire the prince can satisfy entirely. The second in part. As to the first, there is an example to that point where Claridus, tyrant of Heraclea, was in exile. It happened that in the course of a controversy that came up between the people and the aristocrats of Heraclea. The aristocrats, seeing that they were inferior, turned to favoring Clericus, and having conspired with him, brought him to Heraclea again against the popular disposition, and they took freedom away from the people. So finding himself between the insolence of the aristocrats, whom he could not in any mode, for whom he could not in any mode either make content or correct, and the rage of the people, whom he could not endure, having lost their freedom, Clericus decided to free himself at one stroke from the vexation of the great and to win over the people to himself. Having taken a convenient opportunity for this, he cut to pieces all the aristocrats, to the extreme satisfaction of the people. Right? That's this is that line here. This is intrinsic satisfaction, external satisfaction. Okay. This is. So in this way, he satisfied one of the wishes that the people have, that is to be avenged. But as to the other popular desire to recover freedom, since the prince cannot satisfy that, he should examine what causes are those that make the people desire to be free. He will find that in a small part, in other words, he will find that a small part of them desire to be free as to command. But all the others, who are infinite, desire freedom so as to live secure. In other words, there's two types of, in other words, to be left alone. Live secure, but that means to be left alone, not to be harassed, not to be bothered. In other words, there's two types of freedom. Those who wants to rule, self-rule. They want to command. They want freedom. They want self-rule. And then those who just want to be alone. There's two types of... The majority of the many only want to be left alone. They want to be left not harassed. Their idea of freedom means to be free, to live securely and not be harassed or made, to be left alone. Whereas few wants to rule, it's self-rule. Therefore, this is important understanding here. The prince can't, he can punish, and in fact, again, this is interesting, the metaphor he gives here is a different one, but it echoes perfectly the example of What Machiavelli in The Prince talks about is the example of Borgia's use of Rimacco d'Orco. That once d'Orco's accomplished what he did, but the people were angry, he removed d'Orco, right? He had him killed, satisfying the people, left them satisfied and stupefied, right? With the bloody corpse of d'Orco left in the plaza, right? The bloodied corpse, right? The bloody corpse with the bloody knife and the bloody stick, right? Why is that done? It's exactly for the same reason here. The instrument of people's, they want revengeance. He satisfied their desire to punish those who have taken away their freedom, who brought the yoke on them. But the question of they want their freedom, well, the freedom here is two dimensions, as we just talked about. So therefore, he can't, in other words, he'll find a small part of them desire to be free to command, but all others who are infinite desire freedom to be left secure. For in our republics, ordered in whatever mode, never do even 40 or 50 citizens reach the rank of command. And because this is a small number, it is an easy thing to secure oneself against them, either by getting rid of them or by having them share so many honors according to their situation. So they have to be so that they have to be in good part content. In other words, you can secure against them. The many who have the ambition to command, he's saying it's easy to deal with. And if freedom means to command, to self-rule, you can deal with them. They're few. And you can deal with them either by getting rid of them, right, or by giving them shares in honors according to their situation, and they can be content. They will be content. The others, to whom it's enough to live securely, they are easily satisfied by making order and laws in which universal security is included, together with one's own power. In other words, you're making sure that they're not being harassed, they're not being violated, they're secure in their persons and their families, right? In other words, by making orders and laws in which universal security is included. If a prince does this, and the people see that he does not break such laws because of any accident, in a very short time he will begin to live securely and content. In other words, you have to be careful because accidents can happen. In other words, you have to make sure you don't harm the people's security and their safety. And not if there's an accident that forces you to do something against the many. As an example, there is the Kingdom of France, which lives securely because nothing other than that the kings are obliged by infinite laws in which the security of all the people are included, right? He gives the example of France. And he who orders that state wishes those kings to act in their own mode as to arms and money. But in every other thing they should not be able to dispose except as the law orders. In other words, that they can money, arms, and on their own mode as to arms and money. They can do what they want regarding arms and money. But on the other issues, they have to do what the law orders, right? So there is a kind of restraint on the prince. That prince, then, or that republic that does not secure itself at the beginning of its day, must secure itself at the first opportunity, as did the Romans. They have to secure themselves, as did the Romans. So that is the republic, by killing the sons of Brutus. Whoever lets that pass, repents later for not having done what he should have done. In other words, if you don't do it, if you don't give orders, you don't do what he's suggested, you will pay. You'll repent. 6. Since, therefore, the Roman people was not yet corrupt when it recovered its freedom, the sons of Brutus having been killed and the Tarquins eliminated, it could maintain it with all those modes and orders that have been discoursed of another time. In other words, it was able to maintain that situation in all those modes. But if the people had been corrupt, neither in Rome or elsewhere does one find sound remedies for maintaining it, as will be shown in the following chapter. In other words, he's going to deal with that in the next chapter. In other words, how can you, there's no way, if people's been corrupt, you can't find remedies. The remedies he means here is that they're not totally corrupt. There's some good in them. There's some, they have not been corrupted, and they're capable. This does make it possible. Well, we'll stop here. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below, and I will respond to them when I see them. If you like what we did here, hit the like button. Share it far and wide. Share it on your social media. Share it to your friends. If you've not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Encourage others to come and check us out and subscribe. If you didn't like something you haven't, of course you can hit the dislike button or the thumbs down button. But say why in the comments. This way people can learn and they get some benefit from this. If you want to follow me on social media, my social media links are below. If you want to know more about me as a scholar and a researcher and just check out my research, you can check the academic social media links below the social media links. And if you want to assist me with what I do here, financially in that sense, you can do so through Patreon or Subscribestar. The links are there. The links are below. And then also another way you can assist is by buying one of my books, and you can do so either through your local bookstore, or the current available books are listed below. You can either buy it at a bookstore, local bookstore, maybe they'll order it for you, or you can order it through an online bookseller like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Libris, etc. Or you can order it through the publishers directly. Well, that's it. We'll turn next to chapter 17. So have a good day. Take care. See you later. Bye-bye.